We need you to settle down so that we can start our session. Sirs, you can take a photo with Dr. Swamy later because we are all excited to hear him speak here today. Ladies and gentlemen at the back, may I request you to please settle down so that we can start with our program. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the 5th edition of Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund presents Voyage Navigate 2018, powered by ET Now. Just a reminder, I hope you've been using the hashtag Voyage 2018 and also the tag ABCABSLMF. And I hope you've done all your participating in the quizzes because we'll be announcing the prizes very shortly. Alright, it's now time for a very special session. We have with us an eminent personality, a policy maker and a government personal. And he will be talking to us from the crow's nest, highlighting economic policies and a roadmap for the way ahead for India. It gives me great pleasure to invite on stage the Honorable Member of Parliament, Dr. Subramanian Swamy. Dr. Sorry, excuse me. Not so bad. Request, guys, take the... That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Let's have another round of applause for the Honourable Member of Parliament, Dr. Subramanian Swamy. I'm sure we are all ears, sir. We are looking forward to your speech to us here this evening. Over to you, sir.
Start?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much for this opportunity to address the Aditya Birla Group through this program on Voyage. The topic given to me is economic policy and the way ahead. And I will cover the period mostly since 2014 and then explain what I expect to happen in the near future and perhaps later after 2019 where I'm quite confident that we are coming back to power. So one of the few poorly recognized facts, one of the poorly recognized fact is that there are many things that we inherited which we did not speak about in 2014. The classic case is that of the NPAs of the banks, where earlier on there were hardly any fixed rules. It was ad hoc. A telephone call from the Minister of Finance made it possible for somebody to get loans. The classifications were lacking in formality. And by the time in 2014 we woke up to it, it was already a huge problem. The NPA situation of today cannot be traced to any policy decisions of this present government. Of course, that's not an excuse. We were elected to rectify things. So it's assumed that it was bad. The growth rate had been declining from 2008 in GDP, and for the first year 2014-15 and also 2015-16, the growth rate had increased, and then this decline has taken place since then. We have had 3 years of declines or projected declines, and right now I would say, after applying my mind to my knowledge of the GDP, the growth rate should be today about 6%. World Bank and other agencies are predicting that we will grow at 7.3, 7.5, etc. But these predictions mean nothing because nobody remembers what they predicted when the time comes. I would say that even if we achieved in this coming financial year, 2018-19, a 7.5% growth rate as the World Bank's prediction yesterday is correct, that's not sufficient. And what we need now is, excuse me, what we need now is a 10+% growth rate. And it is possible. I remember when I first began applying my mind after getting my PhD in economics and after teaching some years, I began applying my mind to the Indian economic situation. And I was horrified to find, and what turned out to be the true for the period 1950 to 1990, that the growth rate was only 3.5% per year. And most of the left-wing economists who dominated government policy in those days, because of the Soviet influence, they said that this is a Hindu rate of growth. Now, I don't know if communists are drawing up the 5-year plans, how can the growth rate become Hindu? In other words, they wanted to say that it is natural for a Hindu society to go slowly. But that's not correct. It was proved subsequent to 1990, when Narasimha Rao brought those reforms. I must tell you an interesting history, that Narasimha Rao came after the Chandrasekhar government, which didn't last very long. I was a minister in that government. I also held a cabinet rank position in Narasimha Rao's government as chairman of International Trade and Labour Standards. Narasimha Rao actually was very keen to get me into the ministry itself formally, but he made a condition that I should join Congress party. And I told him that I can't do. So he asked me why. I said, because Congress party is a family property and you are just a tenant. I was proved right later on. But Narasimha Rao produced a miracle. And when Chandrasekhar was the Prime Minister, I had been asked by the Prime Minister to suggest a name for an economic advisor. And I immediately thought of Manmohan Singh, because I had known him for many years as a professor. And found out that he was in Geneva. He had gone back on some commission for developed countries or something like that. So I brought him back. We invited him back. He came back, but he made one condition, that Montek Singh Ahluwalia will also be brought into the government. So as my Commerce Secretary, Montek Singh joined in. So the three of us sat together and produced the reforms necessary, but could not implement it. Although the blueprints were produced by us, the courage to implement, which is required of politicians, was that of Narasimha Rao. And I think we should remember him. And I have recommended very strongly to the Prime Minister that the next Republic Day, Narasimha Rao should get the Bharat Ratna, which he deserves. But in short period of 5 years, we went from this 3.5 average to 8%, a little over 8%. Every year increasing growth rates. By dismantling the Soviet system. It was not very difficult to do because although we used to hear propaganda that there is no inflation in Soviet Union, there is no poverty in Soviet Union, there is no unemployment in Soviet Union. But in 1990 we found out there is no Soviet Union also. Because it is broken up into 16 countries. And everybody found out what a mess. People compared West Germany and East Germany and they were shocked at the difference in the economic development of these two states which have now become one country. So therefore, there was no pressure that the Soviet Union used to previously exercise. So Narasimha Rao went full speed ahead. I'm sorry to say that we have never since then had systematic reforms the way he brought it in those 5 years. He directed it. We gave him the ideas, but he directed it and it was executed. So today we need reforms. We need change. The economic policy we have to pursue should be scientifically structured. What is the meaning of scientifically structured? What is economic policy? It consists of 4 parts. And you should see these 4 parts separately. First part is what are the objectives of your policy? 2, since the objectives are multiple, what are the priorities of your policy, of your objectives? Which comes first, which comes second, and so on. And third is, what is the strategy that you want to follow? And finally, how are you going to mobilize resources required for your economic policy objectives? This is the way documents should be addressed. We get fat documents from the Planning Commission and now this Niti Aayog, but there is no clarity as to what the objectives are. There is no clarity about what these strategies are. So if you are to apply your mind as an economist and say, what should be the economic policy? You must deal with these things, 4 things separately. I want to mention one thing more as a professional economist, that there is a fundamental difference between economics as a science and the finance world that you know. Much of finance world is bilateral. I buy, you sell, we have a price negotiated, price is high, my demand is low. It's all bilateral. But when it comes to the economy, it's a system. It's a general equilibrium. And what you know in real life from common sense doesn't apply for the economy. The American president in 1925 found it out the hard way. He called all the economists at that time in America and said, unemployment is too high and I have an election coming. So how do I bring down the unemployment? And the economists were unanimous. And they said, to bring down unemployment, you have to persuade the labor unions to cut wages. And if you cut by 10%, you will wipe out the unemployment backlog. He was persuaded, if labor becomes cheap, of course people will employ more. But when he got the labor union to agree and implemented this 10% cut, he found unemployment had actually increased. The exact opposite what the recommendations were. Why? Because once you cut wages, you are also cutting purchasing power. And once you cut purchasing power, then the demand goes down. And demand goes down means units which are working on the margin, they'll all collapse and wind up. And there'll be more unemployment. So the general equilibrium of economics is different from this bilateral transactional economy that we all usually work on. So in India also these are important factors. We had a finance man from America called Raghuram Rajan, whom I'm happy to say I sent him home, where he belongs. He was going on raising interest rates. And he was saying this is the way to control inflation. But he didn't realize that the more you raise interest rates, you make the cost of capital expensive or high, you raise the cost of capital. And so the small and medium industries which do much of the employing in our country, 2/3 of the employment comes from these industries. They began to fold up. And there was unemployment in the country. And he argued that no, the only way we can bring down inflation is by raising interest rates. Well, it's like a doctor saying the only way to bring down the temperature of a patient is to kill him. Definitely the temperature will come down, no doubt about that. But that's the end of the patient. So therefore, this mentality of seeing everything in this bilateral way is the most dangerous part of our economic policy. And unless you are a professional economist who has been trained to be an economist, who has got a PhD in economics, I don't think that anybody and everybody can do economic policy. So today I'm saying, what are these 4 things that we have to do? Today, if you see the economic trends of the last 4 years, what do we find? We find the growth rate has declined. We only hear that in future it is going to go up. Every year, the World Bank will make a statement, but what happens, nobody remembers afterwards when the data actually come out. And but the fact is the growth rates have declined. 2, the gross fixed capital formation, which is roughly equal to the investment, that has also declined. It has declined sectorally also. Agriculture is the worst hit in this. Unemployment has gone up. These are also statistics. So there has been a general decline in the economy. But according to me, these are all reversible by a small change in policy. And that's what I want to talk to you about, what needs to be done. If you say that 7.5% growth rate is not enough for clearing the backlog of unemployment, for bringing about a reduction in poverty, then what is that minimum growth rate? According to me, it is 10%. Even more than 10% is even better. But if it is 10%, how are you going to achieve it? Well, technical economics tells us that the growth rate is the ratio of the rate of savings divided by the capital output ratio. Capital output ratio measures the efficiency in the use of capital. Our country today, it is 4.3, 4.4, which means about 4, if you invest 4.4 rupees in capital, then you will get in perpetuity 1 rupee per year in perpetuity. And that's very high compared to other countries. At one stage, Japan had 2.8. 3 is normal. If India were to get 3.5, say 3.5, and a rate of investment as 35% of GDP, that 35% of GDP divided by 3.5 will give you 10%. So that rule of thumb is the one that indicates to you how much you have to save. Our household savings is the largest in the world. No other country saves from the household as much as any other country. Our country, you will find that household savings is almost 29% of the GDP. Then you add corporate savings and so on. We were running at 36, 37% till all these recent events came. And now the rate of savings has also gone down. Foreign investment has never been more than 1 or 2%. And I don't think we should think of foreign investment as a panacea. And we have to be very careful that there's a level playing field. Earlier on, when I was Commerce Minister in the 90s, the Walmart had come to see me. Why I was opposing Walmart coming to India, knowing that I was well known as what they call as a free market proponent. I've never been for free market. I am for a market economy where the rules and regulations are umpired by the government, and the government's participation in the economy is minimal. Market economy is different from laissez-faire. It's free for all. That can't suit our country. But I told them that, you see, you come here on a non-level playing field. It's all loaded in your favor. They said, how is that so? I said, at what rate do you get loans from banks? 2%. Our traders in our country, who are in millions and millions, they get loans from banks at not less than 12%, maybe 18%, and the informal market 25%. And they work with the cheap labor that we have. You come with 2% capital, at 2% interest your capital, and then you dip into our labor pool, and you expect this to be a fair competition. Our traders will all be wiped out. There will be no level playing field in this. It's all loaded in your favor. So they asked me how to correct it. I said, one way of correcting it is allow our companies to go to the United States with labor from our country and participate in building roads, houses, and so on. I'm sure that they will produce the lowest price for the tender and they'll get it. Let our people go. Your people come here. You will come with the cheap capital and dip into our cheap labor. We will take our cheap labor to America and dip into your cheap capital. That's a fair exchange. They said that's an immigration problem. So whenever their interests are hurt, they come up with these explanations. I am not at all against blocking any foreign direct investment if it is a two-way street. But it cannot be a one-way street that you can have freedom to bring your capital and we don't have freedom to take our labor. Even on a highly skilled thing of software today, how much difficulty we are having. So therefore, let us not make the focus on foreign direct investment. And it has never been in our history more than 2 to 3% addition to the rate of investment. So our focus should be how to raise this rate of savings, how to encourage people. And I must say, to the credit of the women of India, that they quietly save a lot. In fact, when we had demonetization, the maximum abuses I got was from the household women who had quietly put money under their sari over the years for the rainy day and suddenly found all of them had become demonetized. So the Indian women, the Indian people generally, they are not spendthrifts, they save, and the household saving is the highest in the world for any country. China, their household savings only 15%, whereas practically compulsory the way they have to force people to save. Even then it's only 15% of GDP. Ours is double of that, 29%. In America it is minus 2% because everything is on credit in America. So it's all minus. So therefore, in other countries, households contribute very little to the rate of saving. But our country, the households contribute. So you've got to have that in mind, how to encourage the households to save more. Even the corporate sector, the kinds of taxes that there are, it discourages people, and recently it has got worse. So much so that newspapers are talking about tax terrorism. So we must now incentivize our people to save. So our priority should be, our objective should be 10% growth rate. And therefore full employment is possible. If you have 10% growth rate given the labor output ratio, labor investment ratio, I can easily show that at 10% over a period of 10 years you will wipe out the backlog and you will be running a full employment economy. So unemployment, poverty is connected really with unemployment. So employment becomes key, and therefore we should strategize that way. Strategy has to be, how do we motivate our people? Today there is gloom in the country, and I would say that the first thing we should do to remove the gloom, and I must back off a little and give you an anecdote with me and Narasimha Rao. I told Narasimha Rao the reforms he's doing are wonderful. But I told him, recognize one thing, that all your reforms immediately are depriving the old vested interest of their loot. You abolish licenses and quotas. Large number of people, most of them your party members, I said, are earning by using their influence with ministers and getting these licenses and quotas and then selling it to other industries or selling it in the black market and making a huge profit. So suddenly it all will stop. So the vested interest will lose immediately. But the general public will be benefited, but they will not see it immediately. You say filter down and so on. It will take time. In this interim, the vested interest will create a campaign that you are supporting the industrialists, you are a stooge of the industrialists, you are a stooge of all the big houses, and you will suffer in the election. And it's a fact that in our country, anyone who has been for reforms has suffered in the election. Narasimha Rao lost the election. The man who produced you the most commendable historic economic change and raised your growth rates from the 3.5% to this 8% minimum, that person lost the election so badly that his party strength halved. So did Chandrababu Naidu lose, so did S.M. Krishna lose, and to some extent the same way Vajpayee, who spoke about India shining, he also lost. Of course, Vajpayee also lost because what makes the workers of the BJP work is the emotional appeal to Hindutva, and that, of course, had been completely kept out. So they didn't work. So he was defeated because of that also. But the fact is that if you design your reforms, you should be able to design it in such a way that the losers, as they lose, those who lose, the gainers should also gain something right away. So your reform package should include few things like that. And it's at that time when he asked me, Narasimha Rao, what can I do which will immediately benefit people? So I said, abolish income tax, and everybody will be immediately happy because it's instantaneous. And he was shocked. He said, abolish income tax? I said, yes, you are already collecting taxes through indirect taxes. Why do you need direct taxes? He said, no, then people will attack me. I said, very few people will attack you. Most people will praise you. Only the people who will abuse you is income tax inspectors, but that don't worry. There are a lot of rural development projects to which they can be sent. So, these are the things that are needed. So, what is the strategy? First strategy is incentivize the people to save more by abolishing income tax. I can tell you, if I ever get my hands on the finance ministry, the very first announcement I will make is the abolition of income tax. Mr. Jaitley is a lawyer, so he likes to catch people and fix them. So keep them in dispute all the time. So he enjoys increasing taxes and making it more difficult. But I, as an economist, feel you have to incentivize the people, you have to motivate them. Similarly, let not any loan be more costly than 9% interest rate. And at the same time, fixed deposits should also get 9%. Fixed deposit for 5 years, 9%. So the interest rate should promote savings so that people will want to save. And that will be, if you, today I think it's 6% or something, it should be raised to 9%. So this is the second thing we need to do, strategy-wise. Third thing is, raise resources by auctioning natural resources. We are literally handing over all kinds of natural resources at zero cost, or practically at the bottom price. What was this 2G spectrum matter, in which I went to the Supreme Court and got all the licenses cancelled? Mr. Raja, who was then the telecom minister, decided to charge the market price prevailing in 2001 in 2009. So therefore, in this interim period, 2001 to 2009, the number of mobile phones went up from 4 crores or 40 million to 70 crores, 700 million. And so the market price had gone 10 times. The price which Mr. Raja charged on a first come basis, that itself was bogus, because many of the people were in his office quietly waiting, and as soon as the announcement was made, they went straight to the counter and got their licenses. So there was even in that implementation there was corruption. But the fact is, what was selling in the market could have sold in the market for 10 times the price. Mr. Raja insisted the price should be 1/10, and he claimed that I don't want the tariffs to go up. Well, that could have been a defensible argument if those who got the licenses had then set up telecom companies and started the service. But we find in all 9 cases, all 9 companies which got the 2G spectrum, we found that all of them sold either 100% or more than 50% of the licenses to foreign companies. So Mr. Shahid Balwaz, who's here, I didn't know he was telecom, I knew he was a big dada in land estate. But he suddenly formed a company, and DB estate or something it was called, and he got a license. And what did he do? He sold it 100% to Etisalat of UAE. Same thing with Unitech, they sold it to Telenor. Even Tata sold it to Docomo. Every one of them who got, 9 of them, they sold it at near market prices. Both Mr. Shahid Balwaz of Swan Telecom and Unitech sold to Etisalat and Telenor at 8 times the price they paid the government of India. So had the government of India directly sold it to these people, the revenue gain would have been huge. And that is why the numbers came, 1,76,000 crores, etc. What revenue we got, you just multiply it by 8 times, you'll get that number of 1,76,000 crores. If people made fun of it, Mr. Kapil Sibal said the loss was 0. I don't blame him, because he can't count me on 0, as I found. But the fact is that you could have got those resources. Today we have begun the process of selling, even in these difficult days, we are selling licenses, auctioning them, and getting almost equal to the income tax revenue that we are getting today, which is about personal income tax on personal income tax on personal incomes is about 4 lakh crores. And we are almost gaining that much by this new source of revenue, namely auctioning of the licenses. Tomorrow you will have 3G, tomorrow day after you will have 4G, 5G, this is unlimited. And there will be a revenue stream from that. Similarly, you can get for coal. We haven't really seriously started on coal auction, but the day we do it, we will get 7, 11, 12 lakh crores. And if we are really tough on black money abroad, which can be, you can be if you want to be. So far we have not wanted to be. But I think the Prime Minister asked me for a note, I've given him a note, that the United Nations resolution of 2005 on corruption shows us the way by which you can get the money abroad back. The Egyptians got Mubarak's money out of that by that method. So did the Libyans. So did the Philippines on Marcos. If they can do it, we can do it too. All you have to do is pass an ordinance. declaring all illegal foreign bank accounts of Indian citizens as nationalized, and the United Nations will help you implement it, and you will get the money in that bank in no time. So that is, I'm told, 120 lakh crores. If that is so, that is what? If 4 lakh crores is your personal income tax, that means 30 times. 30 times the... So, there is no shortage of resources in India. This is a whole big myth that has been, like our 3.5%, that is a Hindu rate of growth, you can't grow faster than that. It is a total myth. Same we have a myth that there are no ways to raise resources except by taxation. So, consequently, resources cannot be a problem. As I said, abolish income tax, lower interest rates, raise it for fixed deposits. These are ways of sending signals to the government. And make your tax system a simple tax system, which people can understand. Today we have GST, and nobody understands what GST is all about. They are saying collections are going up. Yes, but I asked them, what about your disbursement? Are they going up at all? They set up a private limited company. The government set up a private limited company. We didn't set it up. Mr. Chidambaram set it up. But then Mr. Jaitley insisted on continuing it. I was the only one in Parliament who got up and said this GSTN will be a disaster for you. It's a private limited company in which HDFC, ICICI and two other private limited company, including a newly formed one, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of the NSEL. I don't know why it is there, but Mr. Chidambaram put it there. And it's a private limited company, and 51% of the shares are owned by private bodies. And the two banks, ICICI and HDFC, is largely the shareholding is of foreigners. And that's why the Reserve Bank has not declared them as Indian banks, but as foreign banks. So why are they there? I had opposed it, saying this will be a disaster. They will not be able to do, because they don't have any capacity to do the computer program. They will have to outsource it. They outsourced it to Infosys. And Infosys on July 1, 2017, the day when we, with great fanfare on midnight in Parliament, declared the opening of GST, they coolly said, we can't set up the computer program. What computer program? You are today converted a situation where the states used to collect the indirect taxes to a situation by constitutional amendment for the center to collect these taxes and then distribute it to the states. I'm surprised that the states agreed to it. But it was a unanimous agreement. I was the only one in Parliament who spoke against it. And all these Congress people, everybody voted for us. And in the end, what happened? The Infosys on the 1st of July, after the inauguration, tells us, no, we have not been able to create the computer program, which is what? All these 41 lakh companies, their taxes collected, it is recorded, and then it has to be distributed to the states. Why? Because earlier on, when something was produced in Bombay, you paid taxes here, then it was sold in Madhya Pradesh, you paid taxes there. They said we'll have a tax at only one place, this place of sale. Then what about those states in which these are produced? They will lose their revenue. So there was a revenue sharing formula being worked out, and a computer program was to decide this. And the computer program is still not ready. Because Infosys first said we can't do it. Then they said, well, the 1,400 crores you gave us is not enough. You must give us 3,000 crores more. We're given 3,000 crores more. Although the GSTN is a private limited company and the majority shares is owned by private persons, Indian and foreign, but 100% of the expenses of GSTN is borne by the government of India. And they decided they'll keep CAG out of the auditing and didn't go into the question of national security. And because of my insistence, it was finally decided to do it. And I'm happy to tell you that 2 days ago the Prime Minister made the Finance Minister write a letter saying that the GSTN should be converted into a government company and the private parties should be removed. But this is rearguard action. This is rearguard action. How can you expect the country to participate in the economy when you are all the time thinking what forms to fill? And somebody from Barme came, he said, "Mere paas to computer bhi nahi hai, main kaise karunga?" You have to upload everything. He doesn't know what computers. So it will be a mass scale evasion. The system is getting too complicated. And therefore, these are some of the things that we shouldn't have done. That's because it was not an economist's brain that was working. It was basically an inspector's mind that was working. How to catch people here, how to catch people there, how to threaten people here. We need vast reforms in the tax system. We should all property purchases, all these registration fees should be abolished. You will get more money for the economy if you abolish these idiotic taxes of registration and on a notified paper, etc. Simplification of our system is the main thing that needs to be done. So, one strategy is the simplification of the system. Not worrying about how you're going to collect the resources, because resources will come. If the economy itself grows, you will get through indirect taxes a lot of revenue. And therefore, if you grow at 10%, you will cover up everything that you have given up in direct taxes. So, this is one suggestion I would make. The second thing is that we have to now lift back the small and medium industries, because whatever you may say, they are the providers of employment. 2/3 of our employment comes from the small and medium industries. And only thing you need to do is ensure they get cheap capital. And that means the interest rates have to be drastically reduced. If it's 9%, it will be sufficient. You know, today, because of our high interest rates, people are using interest arbitrage to earn money without doing any work. People are getting money from abroad, bringing it to India and lending it at a higher interest rate. So they get it at cheap interest rates there, and here they get high interest rates, and therefore they make money without doing any work. So this is a counterproductive system. So it has to be changed. And one of the things that economics teaches you is that the growth of the economy is only 35% due to more capital and more labor. Then what about the remaining 65%? Due to innovations. If you see the progress of the economies in the world from Industrial Revolution, locomotives and Bessemer steel blast furnace changed the situation in Britain, and they got Industrial Revolution, which was then copied by other countries of Europe. Then the Americans came, they brought in a whole lot of new innovations, jet engines, teleprinters, telephones, and so on. And finally, the end of the last century, the internet, which has now reduced transaction cost to a minimum. So, innovations is something we need to do. And in our country, innovations doesn't require any new original research. We are fighting for water. Literally, we are a very paradoxical country. There are rivers which are all the time, every season they are in flood, like Godavari and Krishna. And 90% of it goes to the ocean. 46 rivers of Kerala go into the ocean. And but on the other hand, every year we have a quarrel between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu on water. And they go to Supreme Court, they generate, they strip naked in front of everybody to say how impoverished they have become. All kinds of drama takes place. For what? For water? It can't be for water. In fact, when people ask me, as a Tamilian, what will I say for this Kaveri water dispute? I said, first you tell me, do Tamilians want water or they want Kaveri water? Because if you want Kaveri water, you're getting nothing. But if you want water, I can make arrangements. They said, how? Desalination of seawater. The whole of Israel has 24 hours water flowing out of their taps by desalination. Saudi Arabia, go to Dubai, it's all green because of desalinated seawater. It's a simple technology which we are using. The Reliance people are using it in Jamnagar. When they set up that plant, they were told by the Jamnagar municipality that we don't have enough water to give you. So then the Reliance set up a desalination sea plant. They produce so much water that today the Jamnagar municipality is buying from Reliance for its supply. Same thing in Tamil Nadu. The atomic energy Kalpakam project, they were told they can't be given water for their staff. So they set up a desalination plant, and the only place in Tamil Nadu where you get water 24 hours a day is in Kalpakam and nowhere else, because they have desalinated water, there's plenty of water. So these are the kind of reform. Have a water grid, a river grid. The amount of employment you will generate. Water can come and flow from the surplus rivers to the deficit rivers. And the canals will pass through places like Rayalaseema, which has never seen water. So these are some of the new ways of thinking, which I will call as innovation. And we are equipped for it fully. Thanks to our people who resisted all the horrific attempts to family plan during the emergency, we have a birth rate which is going down slowly, but not the drastic way which Mrs. Indira Gandhi wanted to do in the emergency, or the Chinese did in their country and regretting it today. Our population growth is slowing down, but at the same time, the average age of the Indian today is the lowest of the large countries. 26 years is the average age of an Indian. 70% of our population is below the age of 35. This is the young population which you send them through proper schooling and put them through high-class universities, motivate them to do research. Our people can produce wonders. They are producing wonders in America. Why can't they do it in India? Because the opportunity is not there, the focus is not there, the reward is not there. You get more publicity as a cinema idol in Bollywood or in Tamil Nadu, but you will not get as a scientist who produces some great innovation. There are lots of people who are capable, they have to be more. So education should have been given a much higher allocation. Today we are giving 2.5%, 3%. It should not less than 6%. And you have universities. Persuade all the, in the United States, Harvard, Columbia, Princeton, they are not run by the government. They are run by alumni. It's totally alumni managed. People who do good in life, they come together and they set up a university. The top universities of the world today are not run by government financing, are run by alumni. Our alumni should be tapped to start universities so that this huge population, see, average age is only 26, 70% below the age of 35. This is the prime age below 35 which produces the innovations. What about other countries? China, because of one-child family policy, it is today the average age is what? It is 35. America is 37. Europe is 46. Japan is 50. Japan was forced after the World War by the Americans to adopt a drastic family planning policy, and today see what's happened to Japan. All the toy industry, everything is gone because there are hardly any babies. So I think you know what your resources are. Agriculture, everybody says, is a drag. Why? It is the most potentially successful possibility for you for globalization. The average price of the agricultural products in India is still one of the lowest in the world. And yet we have no facility for exporting it. And nor have we any facility for increasing it. Take a simple thing like, how many crops can you grow in a year in India? 3. Because we have sunshine all the year. Can you grow 3 crops a year in America? No. Because 4 months, 5 months of the year there is snow, heavy snow. You can't do it. Neither in Europe. Even in parts of China you can't do it. But India is the only country where you can grow 3 crops. But we grow only more than 1 crop in just 25% of the land. What a waste. What a potential. And what we found is that the Indian Council of Agricultural Research, Their researchers have showed on experimental plots that on the same mud as the rest of India, they are able to, by packaging the inputs, they are able to prove that you can get 6 times the production which the average Indian gets without this package. And what is the difficulty in package? It's just fertilizer, water, electricity for your pumps. These are things very simple to provide. And that should be the focus. And then export. Because price of wheat in the United States is 4 times that the Indian wheat prices. Same thing with rice. In Japan, it is 6 times India's basmati prices. And in milk in Europe is 6 times the price of milk in India. And how many cows we have? 150 million cows. And today this Indian breed, Bos Indicus, has been declared by the United States, and they've given patents to a couple of people, that its milk is the most medicinally nutritious milk in the world. And today in American supermarket you go, you'll see a separate milk carton which is written A2, and below it is written milk from Bos Indicus cattle from India. And why? Because it's medicinal quality. And we have 150 million cows. They produce an average of 200 liters per year. One Israeli cow on an average produces 11,000 liters per year. Imagine if 150 million cows started producing 11,000 liters per year, how much milk we'll have. You won't have to finance my air travel to India. From Delhi to Bombay, I can come swimming in milk. That is the amount of milk you will have in our country. India is a land of potential. And all that it requires is applying your mind to the bottlenecks and remove them. Empower your people. There is no shortage of resources. As I told you, you can find 1,000 ways to get it besides all these harassing methods of income tax and filling out forms and so on. And I therefore would advocate that India do it. Will we do it? Well, of course we will do it. We never thought that from 3.5% we will go to 7.5% and 8%. But it happened because the situation demanded it. Today the situation is going to demand it. We are now got several problems which we have inherited and we didn't address it in these last 4 years. The bank problem, the way people have looted the banks in this country. We have so much favoritism in decision making. Of course it was much worse earlier. Now at least the norms we have brought in is little stricter than before in who will get the loan, who will not get the loan. But certain things have happened in the past which is a carryover in our time. These have to be corrected for. But the only way to correct it is by simplification. And the call for India should be market economy, simplification of rules, and one final word I will make before concluding, and that is we are overdue to have labor reforms in our country. Narasimha Rao had asked me to give a suggestion on how to simplify the labor law. He set up a commission also for me as chairman with the cabinet rank to produce a report. I did produce a report. But when he asked me finally in the cabinet, what is your recommendation? I have said only one recommendation. Allow companies to fire anybody they want, provided they send them their salary or wages by check for 2 years. In that 2 years, that fired person should find another job, otherwise even that will stop coming. But he should be allowed to hire and fire, because the present labor laws is a maze which will promote people to find alternative ways to employing labor. The capital labor ratio in India is still too high for our industry. I find that now there's a trend towards contract employment. No more the well-established method of a permanent employee with his gratuity and pension funds, etc. They are employing larger and larger proportions of companies are now using contract labor. They take them for a specific project and then leave them alone. because of the unemployment situation, people have to put up with it. So labor reforms is a crucial thing that needs to be done. So I'll conclude on a hopeful note. No government in India has ever won by economic success. Narasimha Rao's government produced the best economic success for the entire 20th century. But he lost miserably. Vajpayee talked about India shining. He too lost miserably. UPA lost justifiably, so I won't say any excuse. But we won not because that we will bring a better economy. Maybe for a handful of people. We won because we created a feeling in our country that we will empower the people to be relevant again in the nation. And that we put it in one word as Hindutva. It was not directed against anybody. In fact, today you will be surprised, 50% of the Muslim community is going to vote for BJP because we abolished triple talaq. And the women are all for it. They do it silently, nobody knows about it, they will not speak, but they are so happy that when they meet me, at least they tell me, this is one good thing you have done. So the same way, earlier on the Congress party strategy was to divide the Hindu community on caste, region, language, etc. and unite the minorities. We have done the opposite. Unite the Hindus and divide the minorities. So that formula will see us through. Will see us through in this election, no matter what anybody may say. We expect to be back in power. We expect the economy to be much improved by the end of this year. Not in substantive terms, but for substantive changes, the next 5 years would become very important. But India is on a roll, because the Indian people have demonstrated all over the world. Leave them alone, give them freedom, they will produce something which nobody else can produce. The status of Indians abroad is an example. Under very difficult circumstances. We were once upon a time the most developed country of the world. So it's not difficult for us to become again. The native intelligence exists. Give them the best educational system. Find all fiscal means to see that people themselves set up universities so that this problem of reservations and all becomes redundant. You don't have to abolish reservations. Just make it such that everybody can get admission, and that automatically means that the reservation becomes redundant. So, educate the Indian people, make them, motivate them to innovate, which we are capable of, and finally, make the ease of business in a genuine sense as little subject to discretionary laws as possible, empower the people to save and invest and make them feel secure. These are easy things to do, plus fire the people's imagination with nationalism, so that they feel as that their national duty to make this country great once again, economically great again. I can assure you that this corruption problem is already on the way to solution. A lot of big people will go to jail by the end of this year. And certainly I won't let any of them go. Because these are open shut cases. Nobody ever thought, these people ever thought that they will ever be brought to book. They thought this is a cronyism which is running this country. It's not. And the advantage of my party, if I may give a little plug in advance for the next election, that it's a party which is not owned by any one family, and therefore anybody can rise in this party. It's a party of individuals, and therefore on this unity, cleanliness through fighting corruption, and finally the economic program which is good for the nature of the Indian people. The nature of the Indian people is decentralization. They don't want to be directed by anybody. And they proved it during the emergency when they voted against Mrs. Gandhi, that they don't want to be controlled by the central government. They want their freedom. The Indian, by nature, loves his freedom, and that you must empower. If you do that, you will have a great India in another 10 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Swamy. Sir, may I request you to stay on just a minute longer, and I'd like to invite Mr. A. Bala Subramanian, the CEO of Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund, to felicitate Dr. Swamy. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Swamy. Ladies and gentlemen, another round of applause for Dr. Subramanian Swamy.